What if the outcome of World War II hinged not on a battlefield decision, but on a single conversation between two of America's most brilliant and volatile commanders? A conversation that nearly tore apart the Allied war machine from the inside. In the autumn of 1944, as the thunder of artillery echoed across the Rhine and the smell of gunpowder hung over the frozen fields of Western Europe, General George S. Patton stood before maps covered in grease pencil lines and burning ambition, demanding the impossible. He wanted the fastest route into the heart of Germany, and he wanted it now. What happened next would reveal the true nature of command, sacrifice, and the brutal arithmetic of war. This is not just a story about strategy. It is a story about two men caught between glory and responsibility, between speed and survival, between what history demanded and what conscience could bear. If this kind of deep historical storytelling moves you, if you believe these stories deserve to be remembered, subscribe to this channel right now, hit the like button, and share this video with someone who loves real history. Drop a comment below and tell us, what part of World War II do you find most fascinating? Your engagement keeps these stories alive. By September 1944, the Allied forces had already performed one of the most stunning military reversals in modern history. The Normandy landings of June 6, 1944, had cracked Hitler's Atlantic Wall open, and through that breach, millions of men, thousands of tanks, and an avalanche of supplies had poured into France. Paris had been liberated on August 25, 1944. The German Army Group B, commanded by Field Marshal Walter Model, was in full retreat. For a brief, electric moment, it seemed the war might actually be over before Christmas, a hope that Eisenhower himself had whispered to his staff in quiet moments. But the euphoria was dangerous. It masked a grinding logistical crisis that was about to strangle the Allied advance before it ever reached German soil. Patton's Third Army was the embodiment of that crisis in its most dramatic form. Since breaking out of the Normandy bocage at Avranches in late July 1944, Patton had driven his army across France at a pace that stunned even his own officers. His forces covered ground so fast that supply lines, never designed for such velocity, snapped like overstretched rubber bands. By early September, Third Army's tanks were running on fumes, literally. Fuel allocations were being slashed across all Allied commands, but Patton felt the cuts most acutely and most personally. He raged against the rationing system, against SHAF logistics officers he dismissed as desk soldiers, and above all, against what he saw as the criminal timidity of the broader Allied strategy. In his private diary, he wrote words that burn with frustration even today. It was within this volatile atmosphere that Patton turned his fury toward his immediate superior, General Omar N. Bradley, commander of the 12th Army Group. Bradley was, in almost every external way, Patton's opposite. Where Patton was theatrical, profane, and combustible, Bradley was quiet, methodical, and unassuming. So much so that war correspondents had taken to calling him the GI's general, a man who seemed to carry the weight of his soldiers' lives with visible solemnity. But Bradley was not weak. Behind those wire-rimmed glasses and that measured Midwestern drawl was a mind of exceptional clarity, capable of seeing the whole chessboard when men like Patton could only see the square directly in front of them. And in the fall of 1944, Bradley could see something Patton refused to acknowledge. The question Patton brought to Bradley was not subtle. He wanted to know the fastest route through the Siegfried Line, Germany's formidable western defensive fortification, also called the West Wall, and into the Saar industrial region. Patton believed, with the ferocious certainty that defined his entire personality, that a rapid, aggressive thrust through the Saar could crack the German Western Front wide open. He argued that the Germans were demoralized, disorganized, and on the verge of collapse. He pointed to intelligence reports, to prisoner interrogations, to the sheer speed of his own advance as evidence. "Give me the fuel, give me the route," Patton effectively demanded, "and I will end this war." The room in which these conversations took place, often Bradley's forward headquarters in locations like Chartres or Verdun, must have crackled with the tension of two very different visions of history. Bradley's answer was not what Patton wanted to hear, and it was delivered with a kind of blunt, unsparing honesty that defined their relationship. Bradley acknowledged Patton's tactical brilliance without reservation, but he laid before him a reality that no amount of audacity could overcome. The Allied supply system, operating under the improvised Red Ball Express Highway Network launched on August 25, 1944, was hemorrhaging under the strain. Thousands of trucks were wearing out their engines running around the clock between Normandy beaches and the front lines, covering distances of over 400 miles round trip. Fuel consumption across all Allied armies had outpaced projections by catastrophic margins. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery's 21st Army Group in the North was consuming enormous resources for Operation Market Garden, the ambitious airborne assault launched on September 17, 1944, which had already ended in the bitter defeat at Arnhem. There was simply not enough of everything to go everywhere at once. Now, right here at the very center of this story is the moment to pause and ask yourself, are you getting value from this kind of historical deep dive? If you are, please subscribe to this channel, give this video a like, and share it with a friend, a student, or anyone who believes that understanding the past is essential to navigating the present. And leave a comment. Tell us what surprised you most so far, or what you thought you knew about Patton that this story is changing. Your voice matters more than you know, and every comment helps this channel reach more people who deserve to hear stories like this one. What Bradley told Patton in those charged, exhausting meetings went beyond logistics. It was a lesson in the geometry of coalition warfare, a kind of warfare that neither man had trained for in the textbooks of their youth. Bradley explained that Supreme Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower's broad front strategy, often mocked by Patton as excessively cautious, was not born of timidity, but of political and military necessity. The Allied coalition included British, Canadian, French, Polish, and American forces, each with their own national interests, their own chains of command, and their own political masters watching from London, Ottawa, Paris, and Washington. To concentrate all resources behind Patton's single thrust, however brilliant it might be in theory, was to risk fracturing the alliance itself. Eisenhower had made this calculation explicit in his directive of September 15, 1944, which formally prioritized the northern approach through Belgium and Holland over the southern Saar axis. Patton never fully accepted it. That much is historical record. He continued to press, argue, maneuver, and occasionally deceive, famously advancing his troops beyond authorized limits, and then presenting Bradley and Eisenhower with fait accompli, daring them to order a retreat. In October and November 1944, as the Third Army ground through the brutal, muddy hell of the Lorraine campaign in northeastern France, Patton's frustration curdled into something close to despair. The great momentum of August had died. The German army, far from collapsing, had stiffened dramatically along the Siegfried Line. General Hermann Bulk's Army Group G fought the Third Army to an agonizing standstill in terrain that swallowed men and machines alike. The golden window that Patton had insisted existed, that narrow corridor of German vulnerability in September 1944, was closing, or perhaps had never been quite as wide as he believed. Then came December 16, 1944. The German Wehrmacht, in an act of stunning strategic desperation ordered personally by Adolf Hitler, launched Operation Watch on the Rhine, what history would remember as the Battle of the Bulge. 25 German divisions crashed through the thinly held American lines in the Ardennes forest of Belgium and Luxembourg, creating a salient that threatened to split the Allied front in two and reach the vital port of Antwerp. The crisis was immediate and terrifying. Entire divisions were encircled. Bastogne, a critical road junction, was surrounded. Its defenders, the 101st Airborne Division under Acting Commander Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, holding on with legendary stubbornness against overwhelming odds. It was in this crucible that Patton's relationship with Bradley would produce its most astonishing moment. Bradley turned to Patton and asked him to do what most professional military men would have considered impossible: disengage 3 divisions from an active front, turn them 90 degrees north in the dead of a European winter, and relieve Bastogne within 48 hours. Patton, who had already anticipated the order, because he understood the battlefield with a kind of intuitive genius that bordered on the supernatural, said he could do it in 3 days. And he did. By December 26, 1944, elements of the 4th Armored Division had punched through German lines and reached the battered defenders of Bastogne. It was perhaps the single most audacious operational maneuver of the entire Western European campaign. In that moment, the argument about the fastest route into Germany was answered not by maps or logistics tables, but by the character of the men themselves. The Third Army crossed the Rhine at Oppenheim on the night of March 22, 1945, one day before Montgomery's massive, meticulously planned Rhine crossing to the north, a timing that gave Patton visible, almost childlike satisfaction. He walked across the pontoon bridge, stopped in the middle, and deliberately urinated into the Rhine River, a gesture so patent that it requires no further elaboration. Germany was entered. The war in Europe would be over by May 8, 1945. Bradley and Patton, for all their conflicts, had together helped forge the instrument that broke the Third Reich. Their debates were not failures of leadership. They were leadership itself, raw and unfiltered, the sound that history makes when great men argue over matters of life and death. If this story moved you, challenged you, or taught you something you did not know before, then honor it. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it with someone who needs to understand what real leadership looks like under impossible pressure, and leave a comment telling us the one fact from this story that hit you hardest. These men gave everything. The least we can do is remember them.